While we're on the topic of objects, let's talk about object equality, because since objects live in a spot and can be changed and yet can be built from the same class, it has a new notion of what it means to be equal. So the basic Java equals check, it's like, okay, is 4 is equal to 4? Is my variable equal to 4? Things like that. It's definitive true things. The number 4 exists, or the string, I don't know what you'd be checking for. Yes or no, let's say. User is supposed to type in yes or no, YES. That's a string. It exists out there. I can check, is that string equal to yes or no? But in Java, it takes on a few different connotations because of the existence of objects. So remember, when I say I'm going to create a line item, and maybe I'm going to buy one item of a pizza. I'm buying one pizza out there. And then you make a purchase of one pizza as well. And so we can ask the question, did we order the same thing? Is your purchase the same as my purchase? Now, that is a loaded question out there. Did we purchase the same thing, or did we purchase the equivalent things? So if you order pizza and I order pizza, and the pizza delivery person shows up with a pizza at my house and gives it to me and doesn't bring one to you, we ordered the same pizza because they gave the one pizza that we both ordered to me. Where if I got a pizza, Hawaiian, that's one of my favorites, and you also got a Hawaiian pizza, and they delivered each of us a Hawaiian pizza, then we got equivalent orders, but not the same order. Okay, so hopefully, does that make a little bit of sense? There's two objects that are the same thing, but they're not the same object. So when I ask equal out there, I am asking, are you the same object? And so in this case, if I wrote this code, it would say false. No, you're not the same object. You got a pizza, I got a pizza. All right? We both got separate pizzas, but they were the same. Anytime you use the equals, it's asking in Java for, am I pointing to the same object? 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, is it the same place? Well, if it's in Washington, D.C., yes, it is. Now, the way we do equality is using the equals method. So if I have an object and you have an object, and I call if I have a pizza and you have a pizza or an object inside of here, and I say, is my order equivalent, or does my order dot equals to, we're just saying, do these things contain the same thing? Why? Any number of reasons. Did two people order the same thing? Is the item, is the username password that just got sent in from the screen the same username and password that lives in the database? Are they equal? So yeah, they're not the same because one came from the database, one came from the user. But if they're equal, then that's okay. We can log you in. So the dot equals, the idea of dot equals is a deep equality. It's going to look inside the values of the object and say, are the values of the object the same? So you have a car and I have a car. Are they the same? I have a Kia Sorento. Yours is different than mine. They have a different VIN number. But they might be both 2014s. They might both be blue. They might both have the extra row seating package, in which case we might say they're the same car. We bought the same car, even though we have different actual things that we drive every day. Again, that's equality versus equals. So in this case, these are dot equals to be true. So the string class comes as a special type of object. And it's important to understand this a little bit because you can create a string by either saying new string hi or just saying the string with the quotes around it hi. And both of these are valid ways of creating a string, but they are not equal ways of creating a string. There's this thing called the string pool, which keeps track of all the strings that get written, but doesn't assume that the strings are equal. So either of those are valid ways of creating a string, but they don't create equal strings. So one of the things we want to point out is a string literal. A string literal is anything that comes between double quotes. So you can see this is a string. It's a string with a line break at the end. /n at the end is a special character in Java that shows a new line at there. The third one's a line with a tab. So when you see the /t, that's a tab character. I can concatenate two strings, first string plus second string. That's still string literals added together inside of there. But strings themselves are immutable, which means, like we referred to before, you can't change them once you create them. So if I create my string hi, I create an object with a string that's inside of it says hi. And if I say my string is equal to my string plus an exclamation point, then what happens is I stop putting to hi and I start putting to a new string that gets created called hi exclamation point. So somewhere out there the word hi still exists. And one of the reasons for this is in your application you might use 100,000 words that you might print to the user. But it's the same 100,000 words to all users. And so in creating those 100,000 words to 100,000 users and have billions upon billions of words out there, Java finds a way of pooling those up and sharing those and keeping the total number of words across all users, somewhat manageable. So that's the idea of immutability, is when I point to a string and somebody else points to a string, if one of you changes it, then it doesn't change the string for somebody else. Every time you make a manipulation on a string, it creates a new string. That does mean there could be some performance risks in there, but Java generally does a good job of managing it. And almost 20 years of dealing with Java, I've never had a problem with running out of memory because of string management. So it's not something really to concern yourself with too much outside of theoretical. So this has an impact on equality for strings. So if I say my string is hi and your string is hi, we both point to the same string. And so if I say, is my string equal to your string? Well, the picture up above says yes, they're pointing to the same object. So absolutely, these two strings are equal. They also happen to be dot equals, but they are equal. So if I instead say my string is equal to hi, and I create a new string equal to hi, these things are no longer equal. So if I say equal inside of there, then this is false because I explicitly told Java to create a new string object to hold this characters inside of there. So if I just deal in literals, Java's fine. If I start creating new string objects in my code like this, then the equal is not going to work. So the rule in general is if you want to know the same value of a string, not the same object of a string, you should just go ahead and use the dot equals method. Because if I use dot equals and the strings contain the same value, they will always come back as being true. So this is an important subtlety, and it's why in general in dealing with objects you will always see dot equals instead of seeing the equal inside of there. It can be confusing at first. It can actually be very difficult to discern because it'll work most of the time, then for some reason it won't. So you could use equal on strings for all of this class and all of the next class, and then all of a sudden you get to 252 and you start dealing with files and the equal doesn't work anymore because the pooling is happening differently. It's building strings a little bit differently. And so just be aware, if you want to check if 2 bits of text stored in a string are the same text, use the dot equals method to compare between them. Generally speaking, in objects, you will use the dot equals method. Now, let's say for some reason you want to deal with strings that are mutable, that you can change them. Well, there's this thing called a string builder and a string buffer outside of there. There are 2 different classes out there that allows you to take the old value and write over that old value with a new value. And that's okay. You can do that inside of the string builder and string buffer classes. So if you know you're doing some really intense string manipulations, particularly around building screens or file manipulations, and you're concatenating a bunch of strings together and using them one time and one time only, then you can use a string builder and string buffer, and that'll help a little bit in performance. So if you do a ton of text manipulations, this is a good idea. If you're just writing little programs for class, it's overkill. Just manipulating strings is perfectly fine. All right, so that is a little bit more about strings. Definitely strings and objects and object equality. Another little thing to file in the back of your head. We won't use it too much right now in this class, but it is an important nugget of Java to be aware of. So you might want to play a little bit of it. Certainly come back to it as you encounter different, more advanced Java programs and problems to solve, because you will come across equality at some point in your coding career.